Good morning. Let's move away from war crimes for a day and a half. Yeah, you can do a lot of dirty tricks business in a day and a half, let me tell you that. And this is about the oligarchs that run the world, and just one or two of their secret societies and their links into the massive economic institutions and the fraud-mongering university sectors. All of them are trained in multinational locations, and all of them are trained to steal from their citizens. Okay. And I get really jumpy because there are so many tiers of cover-ups. Well, I've mentioned Nancy McKinstry in the past and the Wooters Cloyters companies that she runs. There's a company named in this set of disclosures that is McInnes and McKinsey, and that is just a derivativization of Mackenzie, Baker and Mackenzie, and they change the names and they create new conglomerates of companies that are in every country across our world, and a lot of the names on this very elite list are kings and queens and political figureheads, particularly from the English-speaking nations. Yeah, so it's the Anglo-American establishment that largely runs the world, and the profiteering panels that run the world's politics. Okay, some of the families you'll be very familiar with already, and some of them are very akin to the families that we talk about, who are featured in the world's news releases about scandals and murders as regulators of the Basel III project. Yeah, and all of that is part of the same output of people like David Icke, who's mentioned in the author listings for some of these. And you can see that with almost everybody that I've been introduced to on Skype, that they're involved in that type of network. Okay, and it is totally pathetic. They're prepared to desert their nation for a cause that leads to every nation on the world becoming chaotic. And I've written this morning to the Prime Minister in New Zealand and to the people who run the Otago University that I used to work in, pleading with them to come out and let me openly communicate with a man called Dean Henderson, who's on this listing further down. And today I'm just going to get on with showing you. So this is the Committee of 300, and the other web pages that are appended to this have been removed from the web and the internet already. So this is the home page for Pseudo Reality. It gives you a current membership listing of the Committee of 300, and that includes Prince Charles, Camilla, all of the people that are at the trough in the UK. You've got, I'll read off the A's and the B's. So Abdullah II, King of Jordan, Abramovich Roman, that's the head of Chelsea Football Club, the man from Russia. Yeah, he's not even mentioned on the Chelsea Football Club directorates. Okay, Joseph Ackerman, Edward Adian, Marcus Aegis, Marty Atisara, Daniel Ackerson, King of Belgium Albert II, Alexander, Crown Prince of Yugoslavia, Giuliano Amato, Carl A. Anderson, Giulio Andreotti, Duke of York, Andrew the, that's the man who with Fergie was involved in the scandalous terror events at 9/11. If they are not a false news thing, but the whole of the Twin Towers were detonated right in front of the whole of New York, so that bit must be real. Okay, and the victims of that are, you know, from all nations, and that's the trade delegations. And this is how they stitch everything up. Okay, and that demonizes the Islamic people and the people that worked on behalf of Bin Laden, allegedly. Bin Laden, no surprise, was trained in Cambridge and had very elite visits to that city, which is totally corrupted. And I hope this message is getting through to Alan, I keep forgetting his name, the professor in neuroscience who worked in Cambridge for a long time and then became the professor at Otago. Yeah. Alan, and his wife is a Maori princess. They're not, to my knowledge, on the list unless they're using a pseudonym. Okay, so we've gotten to Andrew, Duke of York, Anne, Princess Royal, Nick Anstey, Timothy Garton Ashe, William Waldorf Astor, Piotr Avin, Jan Peter Balkenende, Steve Ballmer, Ed Balls, politician, relatively minor politician. This is a massively influential cabal. Jose Manuel Barroso, the Jose label for the launch of the corrupted EU. Yeah, he was trained in Georgetown by Kissinger. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, Marek Belka, Seafred Bergston, Silvio Berlusconi, Ben Bernanke, former head of the Federal Bank in America. Almost all of these people, since we began to expose them in the honest articles, even on the cover-up side of this, they have been forced into resignation. Yeah, and Bernanke's been replaced by a woman now at the Federal Bank in America, Niels Bernstein, Donald Berwick. That's the Breivik cover that launches the false news stories about terror in Norway, or it may be real killings in Norway, but the same man was alleged to have blown up the bombs in the capital city in Norway and to have killed the socialist students at their socialist rally. That's Breivik, and you know the amount of airtime that got. Carl Bildt, Sir Winfried Bischoff, Tony Blair, we've heard of him, Lloyd Blankfein, Leonard Blavatnik, Michael Bloomberg, Fritz Balkenstein, Hassanal Bolkaya, Michael C. Bonello, Emma Bonino, David L. Boren, Duke of Mecklenburg, Borwin, that'll be Germans again, Charles Bronfman. That's the bootleggers from Canada that launched the bootleg whiskey industry and make movies about brutalising the whole of the cross-border Canadian-US border and scaring the shit out of people because they are the mafias. Now they are on the list of Crown Templar people, and they are also in the Privy Council in the UK. Okay, John Bruton, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Robin Budenberg. I think the Brzezinskis were alleged to have been murdered in their massive mansions, and that's a relatively recent story. Like all of these, when I get active and I begin to make these files on them, but I forget to release the information to the world, they immediately appear in the news, and even their innocent daughters like Angela Lawson are a cover for Lawson, that was the criminal with Mrs. Thatcher in the profiteering regime as her chancellor, found only now in the Muppet Show. Okay, so we've got Warren Buffett, George H.W. Bush, David Cameron, Camilla Duchess of Cornwall, Fernando Henrique Cardoso. Well, let's go all the way to the bottom so that we can get all the secrets out. Peter Carrington, all of the Irish terror issues. King of Sweden, Carl Gustaf the 16th. Duke of Parma, Carlos, Duke of Parma. That may be a cover-up for Carlos I in Portugal, murdered by the Saxe-Coburgs. Mark Carney. Isn't that funny that the head of the Canadian Bank, the Bank of Canada, is now the head of the Bank of England, trained by Mervyn King in Basel, the Basel faulty, and I'm a lumberjack doing okay jokes again. Okay? These are unelected officers in a secret society that steals from the whole world through the institutions that they are planted in as their bosses. with no elections, long periods in office. I believe Mark Carney's period at the Bank of England is 8 uninterrupted years of money laundering and stealing from the bank that should be funding our democracy. Okay, Cynthia Carroll, James Karuna, Sir William Castell, Anson Chan. Now these are the Chan names that come in as the cover for Richard Chan and all of the fuss, the people that have now deserted my cause since I discovered that Jacqueline Chan is an entrepreneurial presence on the business register, and she's in charge of entrepreneurial healthcare companies and the likes of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, and the brother Chan is a Mercedes car salesman. That's Chan. Charles, Prince of Wales, Richard Charteris, Stefano del Pia, Dr. John Chipman, Dr. Patok Chodiev, Prince Schleswig-Holstein, Christoph, Prince of Schleswig-Holstein, Fabrizio Cicchito, Clark Wesley, the Wesley Wood, Duke of Wellington names coming in again, Kenneth Clark, that's the man without portfolio who condones rape under certain circumstances and is now a member of the cabinet with no formal duties except to the secret societies. And the demonisation of all of the innocents across our globe. Nick Clegg, part of the coalition agreement negotiated by the man who had previous at Barclays and JP Morgan. That's David Laws, not on this list, just a minor criminal for a couple of months in the coalition theft project. They're now up for re-election. Bill Clinton, we've heard of him, got my videos shut down globally when I first focused my attention on him. Abby Joseph Cohen, the High Priests of Israel, the cover for Abby, the presenter at Russia Today. Yeah, Ronald Cohen, Gary Cohn, Colonna di Paliano, that's the Duke of Paliano, Mark Antonio, everything's relevant to the Egyptian and the biblical stories, and they keep replaying them. Prince of the Netherlands Constantine II, King of Greece, David Cooksey, Brian Cohen, Sir John Craven. That's not the man who used to present the children's programmes at the BBC, it's the head of the Deutsche Bank, and we've already revealed some of his minor crimes openly on behalf of the Deutsche Bank. And I believe he interlocks to the Flemings and the manipulation of Syria and Ukraine. Okay, Andrew Crockett, Yuri Dadash, Alistair Darling, you heard of him, Better Off Together, Batard, yeah, right up at the top of government, even all those years after Thatcher was the head of the mafia. That's Dawn Margaret Thatcher. Yeah. Sir Howard Davies, Etienne d'Avignon, David Davis, that could be a rugby commentator, Benjamin de Rothschild, David Rene de Rothschild, Evelyn de Rothschild, Leopold de Rothschild, only the Rothschilds with the French connection. They're not dubbing at this stage on the English relatives, but they'll be further down the page, because these issues are run by public schoolboys and they are very gifted at reading and writing particularly inspiring speeches that lead to genocides on everybody else's continents. Okay, Joseph Deese, he's shocking. Yeah, that's a roll of the dice fraud, and it is massive. He's further down in the listings with some details. Oleg Deripaska, Michael Dobson, Mario Draghi, head of the European Central Bank, with one of the girls from the Draghi family in the London Stock Exchange. Okay, William C. Dudley, Jean Duplessis, yeah. That is the massive Rio Tinto empire. The Queen's on that, but I have not sussed her ID so far, okay? William C. Dudley, Wim Duisenberg. Now Wim Duisenberg was alleged to have been Dim Wim, who was murdered as the head of the European Central Bank before the big Eurozone fraud really took over. So one does not know whether Wim is alive or whether he's still face down in the shallow grave next door to the swimming pool he was drowned in. But because of the false news empires and all of those running in every one of the English speaking countries and demonizing the Islamic countries now, you cannot be sure of anything. Okay? Edward, Duke of Kent, that's the one who used to present the trophies, head of Britain's Freemasonry allegedly, a very meek looking man who no longer appears for very long when he gives the trophy to the Wimbledon champion. Edward, Earl of Wessex, Elizabeth II, Queen of the United Kingdom, John Elkann, he's quite sinister, I'll show you his story later on. Okay, Emmanuel, Victoria, Prince of Naples, that's Naples, which was Herculaneum, which is where the New Testament was faked up in the Villa Papyri. Yeah. First Prince of Hanover, Ernst August. This is a modern day listing long after Queen Victoria's lovers were dead and interned in the grave. I don't know whether or not they made it into Frogmore like Mrs. Simpson did, but it seems highly likely to me. I have not found the time for that issue just yet. Okay, Prince of Hanover, Ernst August, Martin Feldstein, Matthew Festina, Francois Fillon, Heinz Fischer, Josh Fischer, Stanley Fischer. You remember the Fischer that played chess in the public eye globally? Yeah. Fitzgerald Neild, France, the Duke of Bavaria. Friedman, Mikhail Friedman, that's the Jewish angel with the Jewish spelling Mikhail, and Friedman, the massive economic criminal out of Chicago, which is probably just a cover for this one. Prince of Orange, Nassau, Frieso. Bill Gates, we've heard of him. I used to respect him because he's a filthy rich man who thinks about his role in life and has the wits to create my reporting mechanisms for the whole world. And thank you to the people who are now getting in touch asking for the PDFs of all of this uncontestable evidence that our world is run by a few hundred filthy rich tyrants who pretend to be political party leaders. Yeah, they're oligarchs and they are killers and they kill entirely for profit all over the world. But they've got higher degrees in all sorts of complicated issues involving the twisted economic sector that we now are the victims of. Christopher Geit, Timothy Geithner, former head. Yeah, when we begin to talk about them, or I begin to post things in my portfolio of information, yeah, they resign in panic because they know that the gods are on my side, and that if you're inspirational and you're prepared to take them on and reveal their crimes, then very soon they will be the victims of those cardiovascular accidents or the trip down the stairwell into the ITU with the broken ankle, for the minor criminals, yeah, that laugh at the stealing and make movies to cover up the horrible facts about how tiny in number the world's owners actually are. Prince of Prussia, Georg Friedrich. So what these people do is they pick from within their unelected community their successors, and you're only picked if you're a deviant and you're prepared to steal from the honest global citizens and pick up a gun or conscript an army to keep the vocal ones in the shallow graves, yeah, or in the law proceedings or in the unjustified prison sentence or the straitjacket. It's really simple when you understand how the brain works, how the frauds then take all of the money out of decent research, which is why this morning I have sent my birthday wishes to academics who are always threatened with joblessness, even at Durham University, one of the world's elite institutions. The boss at Durham University has been forced into resignation because he's a pharma profiteer. His name is Chris Higgins, and he's offshore now for reputational reasons. Okay, George Friedrich, Prince of Prussia, Dr. Chris Gibson Smith, Mikhail Gorbachev, that's the Gorbachevs, you remember them? Al Gore, that's the Clinton-Gore highway, all of the way through the South Island, and vast tracts of land associated with it, and the adjacent golf courses. Yeah. Stephen Green, I've written to John Kerry this morning, pleading with him to turn this situation around. He's one of the more innocent world leaders, and he does occasionally recognise receipt of my, absolutely shocking revelations about why New Zealand has no sovereignty at all, and it belongs entirely to the royals on this list, under money lenders who we've only seen the French side of so far. That's the de Rothschilds. Okay, so Stephen Green, Alan Greenspan, who was a Nobel Prize winner for the economic collapse of the banks in 2008. Gerald Grosvenor, 6th Duke of Westminster, that's the boss at the British Legion with the massive litigation fund in case people like me come after him as a war criminal, which we are now doing, and he has nowhere to go. Joseph Angel Gurner, William Hague, already resigned, part of the Prince's Trust, interlocking director on the secret societies that run the world and empty the treasuries in every participant country, which is all countries. Sir Philip Hampton, Prince of Liechtenstein, Hans Adam II, Harold V, King of Norway, strictly led by the Quisling in World War II and part of the ABBA jokes and the cover-ups of the killing of Breivik, which is the Berwick man further up the list. Okay, Stephen Harper, Canadian Prime Minister Lubavitcher, he's on one of the tabs. He's involved in massive aircraft munitions contracts from 2010 and beyond. Okay. Francois Heisbourg, Grand Duke of Luxembourg, Henri, Philip Hildebrand, Carla Anderson Hills, Richard Holbrooke, Patrick Honohan, Alan Howard. The Howards are in the stories as profiteers and traitors, even when Sir Thomas More was being persecuted for his fairy story about not understanding the religious fraud. All of them understand entirely the religious fraud if they rise up to the head of the Church of England, or in Sir Thomas More's case, the Chancellery of the English Kingdom. He knows all about the religious fraud, and his pretense that he's interested in the what is the mythological place that has no bad side? It's not heaven, but it may come back to me. Anyway, Alijan Ibragimov, Stefan Ingves, Walter Isaacson, lots of undiscovered and relatively anonymous criminals. This one we've got already. Juan Carlos, King of Spain, murderer of his wee brother, killer of rare species, and the man who sired one of the royal princes through Queen Princess Diana's vagina and her uterus. Okay, that is familicide, on both sides of that illegitimate child's birthday. Yeah. And we've got Kenneth M. Jacobs, Deanne Julius, Jean-Claude Juncker, another EU criminal in the mafia, Peter Kennan, John Kerry, massive player who I believe replaced one of the Rices as the Foreign Office Ministry presence in America when one of the Rices was forced into resignation by people like us. Mervyn King, he's the boss at the Bank of England. He's the man we discovered interlocked to the Rothschilds, and he's the man that we discovered interlocked to Portillo and the war crimes of Tony Blair just a few days ago. Mervyn King, Mervy King, yeah. His predecessor is Eddie George, yeah. He is also interlocked to the same people, and is the predecessor for Carney and King at the Bank of England. Glenys Kinnock, you remember the famous Lib Dem who was the Kinnock from Scotland? It's just a cover, and they are just puppets on the end of the fascist black strings. Okay, Henry Kissinger trained Barroso at Georgetown. Malcolm Knight, William H. Kuhn, the launch of the Alf Garnett Kuhn's joke to cover up the filthy rich fascist families, and Alf Garnett was a supporter of the fascist side. He was a conservative supporter from a town called East Ham, with the word ham in it, in London, and his opposition in the family was the dad of Tony Blair's socialist wife, who's a lawyer and is part of the world ownership team. That's Cherie Blair, yeah, out of Liverpool, like Lord Liverpool and all of the Empire scandals. Okay, Paul Krugman, John Couffior, Giovanni Laiolo, Anthony Lake, Richard Lambert, Pascal Lamy, Jean-Pierre Landau, Timothy Lawrence. That could be Princess Anne's husband, perchance. The Lawrence name is big in the dirty tricks business. James Lee Pemberton, Crown Prince of Albania Lika. Yep, that's the Albania where the Rothschilds have their interests, in the Butrint place. Yeah, yeah, it's a very poor looking place, but you do not believe anything that the Rothschilds have holdings in is poor. Okay, I'm still trying to suss out why Butrint is so important to them, but look at the video that I made with John Patterson on the Gilbert Foundation and all of the stories involving Frank Bruno and Bruno the head of the World Bank and all of the Rothschild crimes, even in the wallpaper sector in Mayfair. Okay, Mark Leonard, Peter Levine, and that's the cover of Avril Lavigne, and things are really complicated in this world. Lev Leviev, Arthur Levitt, Michael Levy, that's the Levys and McRaes, next to the Cohens, one of the most highly ranked families in the Old Testament in the Jewish nation. Okay, Ian Livingstone, Li Shen Lung, Archduke of Austria Est, Lorenz of Belgium, Duke of Anjou, Louis Alphonse. Yeah, the Alphonse Adolf connections. Gerard Louis Dreyfus, the cover for the Dreyfus cases and all of the anti-Semitic news that led France into World War I, and still has got the links to Jerusalem that demonises the Islamic menace and all of the terror threats when I report the massive religious frauds out of Frankish Paris. Princess of Orange Nassau, Mabel. A very simple name. Peter Mandelson, Sir David Manning, Archduchess of Austria, Margarita, Queen of Denmark, Margaretha II. Yeah, and I've got links on the tabs that link Denmark and Ireland to the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, and it's linked to Dan in the Old Testament. Do you get it? Denmark. Martinez, Guillermo Ortiz Martinez, Alexander Mashkevich, Prince of Ruka Seca de Volsci, Massimo Stefano, Fabrizio, Prince of Arsholy, and Trigiano, Massimo Brancaccio. Do you wonder why they do not bother with elections in Italy anymore, and they just let the oligarchs like Berlusconi have the job? And when we get a man called Jeff Rents coming into the picture globally with me and Dean Henderson, then they pick a new Prime Minister to replace Berlusconi, and his name is Renzi. Anyway, I did not mean to show you the whole of this list, but let's do it. Let's continue with it. I'll give you the URL for it, and I've already sent the PDFs of the entire list of world criminals to people this morning. Okay, Mr. William Joseph McDonough, Mark McClarty. Oh, McClarty, he appears in the Rab C. Nisbet City of Culture episodes. Eve Mersch, Prince of Kent Michael, King of Romania. Oh, that could be the tennis man, I've made a mistake. David Miliband, the socialist from Lithuania. Ed Miliband, the socialist from Lithuania, with the revolutionary father, the socialist from Lithuania, without a British passport. Now the head of the opposition, in inverted commas, and friends of Gordon Bowden. Lakshmi Mittal, we've heard of him. He's the one who does not make tanks, but is the steel magnate. Prince and Landgrave of Hesse-Kassel, Moritz. Yeah. Rupert Murdoch, heard of him. He's a film director on the Gallipoli movie Charles Napoleon. We've heard of them. That's Napoleon's in Free France in Paris, way after the Napoleonic conquest, but they still get to be emperor even as fascists. Okay, and we've got Jacques Nasser. That's the Egyptian people who were killed by these other people. Do you remember that? That's the Suez Canal crisis. Robin Niblett, Vincent Nichols, Adolfo Nicolas, Christian Neuer, Sami Ofer, Alexandra Lady Ogilvy. Ogilvy. That's the Ogilvies who've now been sainted by the Catholic Church since I began to pick out their financial crimes, their links to the royals, and their pharma crimes. Yeah? And they are massive in Scotland. Oh, there's another one. The Earl of Airlie. I met a really luscious woman in the university at, it wasn't Bradford, I forget what the name of the university was where I went for my interview. Might it have been Wakefield? I can't remember. It was just to the south of Leeds. Yeah, and I came all the way from New Zealand, and there's an Airlie there, and she's got virtually no funding at all for her cancer research, and that ties together several of my hypotheses all at the same time. I keep trying to get Rachel, who was, I think, a senior lecturer or a reader at that institution, to talk to me, but none of them will now, because I realise that almost everybody I've been introduced to in my career is part of this plot. Okay, Jorma Alila Nikki Oppenheimer, that's Margaret Hodges' friends. George Osborne, oh, he's the Chancellor in our august country, could not find his way to number 11 Downing Street when he was elected in 2010 because he was so excited about the personal gain issues and the emptying of his treasury in inverted commas. Frederick Adair, St John Parker, Chris Patton, he's been disappeared with an act of God in his myocardial region, Michael Peberer, Gareth Penny, Shandon Perez, Philip the Duke of Edinburgh, Pio Doncarty, Duke of Braganza, Karl Otto Paul, Colin Powell, Mikhail Prokhorov, Eddie Quadent, Anders Fogh Rasmussen. I think he was the head of NATO, and when Greg Hallett described him as a hopelessly drunken cross-dresser, he got his reputation back because we exposed him of being someone who's at the head of the world at the world's expense, and all of a sudden he went on rehab and he got better a lot quicker than Kylie has done. But I wish her well. Joseph Alois Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI. Yeah, are you seeing the gravity of it and why he was sent back to his safe house in Italy, which used to be a park hotel? David Rubin, Simon Rubin, William R. Rhodes, Susan Rice. Yeah, somebody, Duke of Gloucester, Richmond, I can't see that because there's a picture of the Herzog owned mansion in Germany. That's the Herzogs who are now the claimants to the Stuart throne of Scotland. Yeah, and that's the Herzogs that make the movies about taking the ship up the Amazon as a joke about the ownership of the world coming from the Amazonian region near the Black Sea, and when they joke at the defoliation of the whole of the Amazon region so the burgers can be made for McDonald's, it really becomes quite sickening. Okay, and then they launch the green scandals and the tax on breathing. Okay, Mary Robinson, do you remember her? Mrs. Robinson in the Simon and Garfunkel films with the teenage lover. Yeah, Mary Robinson is on the filthy rich owners of the world's listing. That's another cheap shot Irish crime. Stephen Roach, Sir John Ripblack, Sir Malcolm Rifkind, the war criminal, interlocking Foreign Secretary with John Anthony Chilcot, and all over my website, even in the days that I was making my investigations with Gordon Bowden. Yeah, and what else have we got? Rockefellers, 3 of them, only 3 of them on this list. David Jr., David Sr., and I'm not sure what the third name is because I've got the Herzog details spattered all over it. Javier Echeverria Rodriguez, okay, and man, Ogilvy. So 3 Rockefellers: Rodriguez, Javier, Rogoff, Jean-Pierre Roth, Jacob Rothschild, David Rubinstein, Robert Rubin, 10th Prince of Cerveteri, Ruspoli Francesco, Safra, Joseph Safra, Moises Safra, Peter Sands, Nicolas Sarkozy, yeah, that's the French Prime Minister. Goodness knows what happens to them when they're through their period in power. He's the one that had all the marital issues with his luscious looking wife, and when he was replaced by the socialist plane was hit by lightning as soon as he took off. Okay, and all of those are just covers for people who are on the Rothschilds interlocks. That's James Sassoon. That's the Sassoons who helped to partition Palestine in 1947. So Robert John Sawyers, Marge Brown Scarino, Klaus Schwab, Schwarzenberg Karen, Stephanie Schwartzman, Sidney Shapiro. All this launch of the ballet dancers, Nigel Sheenwald, Grand Duke Tuscany, Archduke of Austria, Sigismund, Simeon of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, Olympia Snow, Queen of Spain, Sophia, so that could be the snowy Cameron joke, and she's alleged to be part of the Nell Gwyn dynasty. Queen of Spain, Sophia, George Soros, part of the Michael Moore frauds that take you into Melrose and Porteous and the Alec Douglas homes. Ernst Stern, Dennis Stevenson, that could be Robert Louis' family, but I'm only guessing. Tom Stever, Joseph Stiglitz, another prize-winning economist. You now understand, because of the war issues, the implications of winning prizes. Dominique Strauss-Kahn, the rapist, which is just a cover for his massive financial crimes as the head of the IMF before Lagarde. Jack Straw, current master of the Royal Order of St. George, for the defence of the Immaculate. I forgot to read out, oh no, sorry, that's in another Wikipedia. Do not pay any attention to what I just said, other than Jack Straw is on the Club of 300. Or he was when he was in power, and he was Tony Blair's Foreign Secretary. Yeah. And he used to confirm receipt of my emails. Peter Sutherland. The Sutherlands are on this list, revealed by Dean Henderson as being cotton plantation owners. That's the Sutherlands who were the Dukes and Duchesses of Sutherland, who sent the Scottish colonists to the colonies. Do you get it? Their cousins are running the cotton slavery industry in America, and the Scottish slaves get sent there, but not nearly as many as went to Canada. Okay, and what we've got now is Mary Tanner, Ettore Gotti Tedeschi, Mark Thompson, Dr. James Thompson. Those are likely to be the Thompson twins that were the news magnates and are in the Tintin jokes, yeah, in my portfolio of comic collections about world history. Tucker, that's the name of the professor in New Zealand who was the head of the pharmacy school, who with the chemists nominated me for my Nobel Prize. As soon as I became a fraud researcher, that bastard Professor Tucker bailed out of my communications list. Yeah, he's the one who used to take us to dinner. Yeah. Yeah, and everyone, there were professors, Barclays, there are professors that are tied into all of these elite families, and they still run the world through the secret society. Okay, Hans Titmeyer, sorry, Jean-Claude Trichet, Paul Tucker, the Iman von, no, I can't read that because of the Herzogs have gotten in the way, Alvera Haibi Velets. So we're getting down near the bottom of the alphabet now. Let's just keep going, and then I'll read you the tabs and I'll give you some of the more sensational revelations. Okay, we've got von Habsburg, Otto von Habsburg, Paul Volcker, the head of the World Bank, and the Volcker shock treatment, which is the launch of the laundering and the remuneration by governments of the crashing of the banks by the governments, who are just slaves to the world's filthy rich elites and tyrants. Okay? Joseph Wallenberg, John Walsh, Max Warburg, Webster, Axel Alfred Weber, Michael David Wheel, Newt Wellink, and I think Newt was one of the nicknames for King Arthur when he was young. Von Neumann, Whitman von Neumann, Prince of Orange, Wilhelm Alexander, Prince of Wales, William. Yeah, that's Kate and Wills, the Duke of Cambridge, one of his aliases. Dr. Rowan Williams, the head of the Church of England. Yeah, do you remember all of the Englishmen getting taken prisoner in the brutalised Holy Lands? Many of them were from the Hemel Hempstead. I forget the name of the person who was jailed for years and interned in a secret place and was nearly starved to death and several times was almost beheaded. But he lives in the Hemel Hempstead constituency near the Harris family and the Butlins fraudsters. Okay? Prince of Orange, William Alexander, Prince William of Wales, Dr. Rowan Williams, Shirley Williams, a leading socialist for a long time when Tony Blair was leading socialism into genocide for profit and for the Kazakhstani kingdom, where we had another familicide in the monarchies, although they might be emperors or tank commanders. David Wilson, James Wolfenson, the Wolfenson military munitions frauds, and not the Wolfson Trust, one hopes, but it's spelt slightly differently. Neil S. Wallen, Harry Wolff, James Jr. Woolsey, R. James Jr. Woolsey, Sir Robert Worcester, Sarah Wu, Robert Zellick. Okay, so what we've got here is reference. This is an extremely insightful website, although some of the people like David Icke are contributors to the other lower tabs. This bit must have been particularly insightful because it takes you back to the 12 tribes that for the first time took ownership of Europe, but you're not allowed to know who they were or what their IDs was. Okay, it says 12 tribes of Europe deleted with threats. Okay, cover your funeral costs, get started. Notice this domain expired on the 24th of January, February, March, the 24th of March 2015, and is pending renewal or deletion. Okay, we don't allowed to know who the 12 tribes are and what they are now known as in the financial dynasties. Okay, and there's the joke about Denmark and Dan in the Old Testament. Yeah, different authors. The names suggest that this one is likely to be American. Yeah, but what they're saying is about Dan and the links between the ancient biblical texts and the Greek myths. It is totally true. Yeah, but what they do not understand, because they cite the Piso family and all of the Piso criminals and all of the writers of the fraudulent New Testament, this is full of religious texts, and they cite the Pisos. Yeah, and they cite the names that the Pisos gave to their family friends in the Roman courts, but they're right onto how they do the fraud generation after generation, and how they switch the heroes being Hercules in some of the Greek stories, and they are the man who, Samson. Yeah, do you get it? Samson. Then it gets translated into the South Pacific and it becomes Samson in the Korean stories. Yeah, but by then Korea does not belong to the Koreans, and that is particularly sad. That's the Nixon crimes again. Okay, we've got demons, and the secret societies out of London and out of America are massive. Okay, so this is the Committee of the 300, and you've got the allegiance to 3 massive cities and regions in the world that explain a lot of the deviancy and a lot of the world leadership issues. So you've got the City of London Corporation. The City of London is an archipelago within the country of the UK, which is immune from the UK Constitution since the Magna Carta was signed. Yeah, okay, the Vatican, all roads lead to Rome, and look at that. There's the White House, there is the stretch of land in front of it, and there's the Vatican in Rome, and they're direct copies. And when you look at that, it takes you into the war graves in Gallipoli and Amiens and all across Europe. The same laminated model with the penile monument at the other end, and the massive White House architecture, and the dome, which is the symbol for the dome on the rock in Jerusalem. Isn't it clever? Yeah, everybody is imposed all of that, and the only people in power are in secret societies. There is no democracy, there is no freedom anywhere on the globe. Okay? So, the District of Columbia, Washington, DC. Do you get it? Yeah, I don't know whether that's the Vatican or that's the Vatican. It's exactly the same place, the same image. And what you've got is the little pond in front of it. Yeah, the melon joke in the Lord of the Rings film. Melon is the code word to get into the underworld, and Melon is the leader of the Treasury in America as they enter into World War II with the Citizens' Gold in Fort Knox and in the Fleming movies. Okay, so District of Columbia, Washington, DC. Yeah, that's on the East Coast, but it is not the New York Empire State, which is a joke about London still owning it. The British Empire State still owned until 2040 something. All of the taxes come from America into British hands and into HRH's thrall, okay, which is why she's particularly difficult to find on the British Business Register. Okay, and you've got the Vatican City, the religious power centre, the fraudulent epicentre for the Nazi laundering in World War II, and the involvement of people like Pope Pius XII and Archbishop Hoodle, who was born in a shoemaker's town. One of the tabs is on the Shoemaker dynasty, and that is why Shoemaker Shoemaker, I think, is the Formula 1 racer. Schumacher, yeah, and it is absolutely amazing how the media are slaves. I would not at all be surprised if Schumacher did have an accident on the slopes and he was Jeremy Clarkson's Stig, because it is a belly laugh for them for decades that they get away with this without any scrutiny and without any accountability in law enforcement, in government, in economics, and in the civil service. All of them are twisted. And when you see what the army and the navy and the air force leaders get to brutalise other people's chattels and other people's weaponry and ships in the great conflicts, it's just like having a flutter on the GGs. And that's the joke. The GGs are the governor generals that drive the world to war again and again and again, and then they run the war graves industry at places that look just like that. That's Quentin Bryce in the Australasian context, and it's Ferguson in the New Zealand context. Okay, right then. So I'm just going to go through the tabs because we're going to run out of time. If anybody's particularly interested in any of the stories, I can send you the whole of the PDF for this. Okay, Chatham House, another name for R2A. Now this is really funny for them because that looks just like the twisted IRA concept, doesn't it? Yeah, R2A. That's the Royal, I forget what it is. Oh, there it is, it's on the next tab. So Chatham House is an evil, evil place. Yeah, and I could not get into the details of how it runs. You're not allowed to know who the staff are today, which is why they shut me down with that message. Yeah, but it is just a secret society. It's run by someone called Milner, and Milner is linked into the BNP and the British fascists, and all of the links that we talked about in the 1912 Hotel Cecil meeting. And the Cecil character is a world leader, and he brings all these people together in the secret society. Okay, so let's see what R2A stands for. It's a pseudonym for Chatham House, but it is the Royal Institute of International Affairs. That's the Royal Institute in the constitutional monarchy, which is driven by democracy in inverted commas, yeah, and which Alex Salmond tried to sell as the concept of freedom to the Scottish people, who were easily taken in by that story. His finance was going to come from the Isle of Man, where they wear the white helmets, and where Pope Ratzinger went for a time. Oh no, sorry, it was Tiny Rowlands that was on the Isle of Man prison camp for about 6 months at the early phases of World War II, before they sent him into the diamonds and gold sector in the Republic of South Africa, which is the Duplessis Empire and the Rio Tinto Empire. Okay, so R2A is the Royal Institute of International Affairs, okay, or Chatham House, which we're not allowed to know about in the previous tab. Okay, and it's called the Round Table Organisation. I've told you the stories about an innocent, warm-hearted person who's a professor in a new job in a new country, and what he wants in his office is to share the power base with his people and all of his staff, so he insists on having a round table like King Arthur. That was almost a decade before he learned that the King Arthur stories are written by the Roman popes, and the Roman popes are a total fraud, but only the people who can speak Greek and Latin are allowed to know that for 2,000 years. Okay, right then, so I'm just going to go through the tabs and let you know the gist of how many SS institutions or royal affiliations there are, so that the world can never have a decent and prosperous future. We're in the 7th or 8th tier of the massive sovereign debt funding crisis. No democracy on the globe is allowed to issue funding for any of its democratic activities, and it is really sad. And all of the mums in my region and all of the people who beg in my supermarket now understand that. It's simple, and they put their initials on my petitions when I take them to the police station. And the blonde who chucked me out the police station waved warmly at me yesterday, because she's now become a celeb in the suppression of freedom. Okay, Anglo-American, what have we got here? And these are massive websites. This takes you into the geopolitical manipulation of London, all the adjacent city. So Chatham House is very close to the London School of Economics. It's very close to University College London. It's very close to Gower Street and all of the massive scientific interests, the museums in that region, the Henry Wellcome Museum, the locations for the big banks where Jacqueline Chang's brother was alleged to have been murdered. Nobody's allowed to know whether that's a true story or it's just a fraud. But when I told it, and I put this guillotine on the front page of my website, Stephen Hester, who was the banking leader at the head of that bank when Chang was killed, yet he was sent into exile and he fled to America, like the brother in the Lithuanian Brotherhood, Miliband. Both of them fled the same week when we put the guillotine on the web page. Hester is a joke about the jesters and the goblins on the church roof, but he works as the boss at the RBS after the previous boss, who's a millionaire already and gets to keep the millions, but is stripped of his knighthood. And he works in the city of Edinburgh, and it's just massive. Yeah, the whole world is a globalised theft project, and nobody gets the benefit of it, because nothing can be invested in peacefully and safely, because everybody, even your colleagues in business, are going to scam you if they get the opportunity. And if you turn against them, you're likely to get a knife in the back, like many of the innocents in this story do. Okay, here's the round table story again. Okay, Anglo-American elites. Establishment, it's the word. The Anglo-American establishment is what makes it tick. The peer pressure. Okay, it's taken a wee bit of time to load. Okay, and what have we got? Oh, this is the Milner link. So I mistook the Milners for the people that live in Reedsdale, but they are actually the Mitfords. Okay, they're fascists. they're friends of Hitler, they get pictured with Hitler. Okay, so this is the index for this. Chapter 1, Introduction. Chapter 2, so this is Georgetown University, the Anglo-American Establishment, New York, Books in Focus, Table of Contents, Introduction, the Cecil Block, the Secret Society of Cecil Rhodes, Milner's Kindergarten, 1897 to 1910, Milner Group, Rhodes and Oxford, 1901 to 1925. We've got one world war in the middle of that period. The Times, the Round Table, War and Peace, 1915 to 1920, creation of the Commonwealth. The Royal Institute of International Affairs, looks a bit like the IRA for a laugh. India, 1911 to 1945. We've got another massive war in that period, and we've got an empire. And we've got links to Lord Liverpool and the Jaghir. Yeah, and we've got Governor Generals all over it, and the poor people are really, really poor, and the cadavers just lie on the street corners. And the financial buildings are just as big as they are in London. Where did we get to? Okay, foreign policy, 1919. Oh, they're generous enough to think about treating people gently after 1918 is over, to 1940. Yeah, that's a year into the war, when Hitler was already on the Channel coast and Dunkirk and Amiens had already happened. A tentative roster of the Milner Group. Okay, I'm going to keep going down so I can show you what's in store and what you can find out for yourself if you just look these terms up on the internet and you save the PDFs and you save things after you've processed them on OneNote as PDFs. Yeah. Okay, a short history of the Round Table by Will Banyan. The study groups of the R2A are direct descendants of the Round Table meetings of the Round Table group. Okay, and there's an index. It's ever so civilized, and I do not have the Latin version. Okay, so you've got ancient history of the secret society, parts 1 to 4, Cecil Rhodes and his Knights of the Round Table. That is the eugenics movement. Cecil Rhodes and the Rhodes Scholarships. The Rhodes Scholarships is now headed by the man Hood, Professor John Hood, former head of Auckland University, then head of Oxford University for a very brief period of time, because they made a fuss about it and they put him in an even more powerful position. Okay, and what you've got is the CFR, the Committee for Foreign Relations. Yeah, foreign relations. There are no foreign countries, they're owned by Homeland Security now, all across the G8, which is why I've written an email to John Key in the G20 this morning, pleading with him to come out on behalf of his people. Okay, that went also to Professor Cliff Abraham, head of psychology for a long time at Otago University. It went to Dean Henderson as one of the most innocent activists and the most informed world historians. His tab is further down. His focus is on the modern day frauds and the massive banking and oil interests that consume the whole of our world leadership team now. Okay, and we've got the Round Table Bilderberg Network. That's the Bilderbergers, where all the leading socialists like Harold Wilson, the carpet bomber, yeah, in the Egyptian revolution, the socialist bombed, yeah, the Garden of Eden to keep the BP plant lucrative in that region. That's the Garden of Eden, which is now the Yemen joke. And here we go. Touch the nerve. Right then, this is the Mitfords. There's a loyalist on the phone. Okay, so I get confused here because I thought that the Mitfords, I knew that the Mitfords, or one of the fascist families, was in Redesdale, just south of the border, over the Carter Bar, just beyond the Jeddah Justice jurisdiction. Okay, and so it's not the Milners, but that is the Mitfords. Okay, and the Mitford sisters are the blonde bimbos that line up with the Nazis in the lead up to World War II to take the attention of the other names, the really big criminals that are stealing all the assets and putting the citizens' gold in Fort Knox. Okay, so let's get to Dean, because he's a very important person. He's still active. Yeah, this is the man who talks to Jeff Rense. Jeff Rense and he have been, you know, the most informed people on the American side of this very, very elite conundrum, and they understand it entirely and all of its history. Okay, so there's this, the stories that he tells takes us into the crimes of the French, the narcotics ownership, and the trafficant stories that take us back to de Gaulle, Pompidou, Jacques Foccart, and everything that Henry Kissinger did to the world in under Nixon's leadership team, and that is the narcotics empires that America owned for a time. Yeah, okay, the Chinese wars are the opium wars run by the British monarchy for 200 years. Yeah, okay, and I have not got time to show you all of that. Let's now just go to some of the tabs that I found when I was working my way through the Club of 300, and there's Alan Howard, hedge fund manager, Kenneth Jacobs, some of them I visited this morning, Olympic Order, gold with Co and the serpent sign. So this is the gold frauds, and that is Paul Dayton, Baron Paul Dayton, the Right Honourable Lord Dayton. He succeeded James Sassoon, another 300 Club member. Yeah, and this is him at the Moët Champagne Hennessy Financial Times Club dinner in London in 2011, and he's grinning like a Cheshire cat because the Commonwealth, the Olympic tournament in London is just a year away. Yeah, and I've explained to you how all of the profiteering in that takes in Nick Clegg from the list, Princess Anne from the list. David Beckham is the joker in the team. He's the only innocent that has got massive mansions in North Wales. Yeah, but he plays the role of Ali G, Michael Moore the comedian, and the Marx Brothers, and all of the people in the Red Nose Day comedy frauds, yeah, who think they're being really clever in covering up their own government's crimes, but when they get the pathologies as a consequence, it's not nearly so funny unless you're on the decent side. Okay, and that story's been told again and again and again, and you know all about G4S failing to show up, you know all about the profiteering, all about the scams where they created a new lane, the taxi drivers in London could not use it, and they created private companies to profit from everything that happened in that event. And when Mr. Bean opened it, that is the event that is going to bring them down. Yeah, the war crimes proceedings are looking them straight between the eyes now. Okay, Mr. Bean, the war correspondent for Gallipoli, playing the organ and cheating as he wins in the Chariots of Fire race and the parody about that movie and about the religious fraud, which is 2,000 years old, which is why Pope Benedict's in this team, and his successor Francis is a genocidal killer in the South American cults that occur in Chile, Argentina, Brazil, all over that massive continent, owned entirely by North America. Right then, US inducted, I'm not sure what this is, Peggy Lee, this is a link to the Carnegie Hall concert sector, and Peggy Lee and Benny Goodman and the big bands that we told you about. This is relatively ancient history, had a fling with the Lithuanian Jew. Okay, so Friedwald was the Lithuanian Jew, and that's relatively irrelevant compared to some of the stuff that I've already highlighted. So this is a sick war crimes joke, and it's about the lilies of the field, and the nickname for them in the establishment, that is the Anglo-American establishment and the elites that are run by P.G. Wodehouse and all his comedies, there is the stink flower. It's the lilies of the field, okay? And they're not red like the poppies in the profiteering sector, they're Rothschild yellow, and that's the cowardice thing, and the whole thing stinks, which is why they make the joke about it, okay? Right then, and we've got everybody that has been mentioned by me and been put into tabs like this as documentary evidence of their crimes, and even their family members get persecuted and forced into resignation. So we've talked about William Hague, we've talked about the heads of the Federal Bank in America. All of them have come crashing down during their period in office, way before it was supposed to end. This is Nigel Lawson, he's on that list, yeah. Somehow or other I missed him out, or I did not emphasise it, yeah, but he's involved. His daughter is married to the Saatchi and Saatchi advertising lineage, yeah, and his daughter was persecuted in their marital affairs to cover up this man, and he's got that eminence grey look about him. He's really drawn and stressed looking, because he's a major criminal. That's Margaret Thatcher, Geoffrey Howe, John Major, and he's the Chancellor, yeah, took us into Gibraltar. And I've explained the joke about the hood being sunk, and the opposition, the Argentinian captains and navy leaders get the prize money for the sinking of one British ship in that conflict. The man who was the head, the captain of the hood, was court-martialed and thrown out of the UK forces because they lose their wager. Do you get it? That is the Amiens story that I told you about yesterday, and how the Free Love and Wilson companies run the awards for the prize winners and the most brutal acts in the war as a private finance stream. Okay. Nigella Lawson is a relatively innocent chef, and she gets brought into the public eye like all of those people that we talk about all of the time, and Clarkson is the best example of that. Although the woman, Gwyneth Paltrow, for a long time, she's the wife of the lead singer at Coldplay, who's also a fraudster in religion, in magic, in the circus, and all of the sectors that we've talked about. All of his songs are a joke at the world's people's expense. So Paltrow was demonised like Angela Lawson for a while. Okay, Jumbo Wilson, this is another joke about Hannibal and the elephants, and this is a little fat army leader. Yeah, there he is. Maitland Wilson, Supreme Allied Commander in the Mediterranean. Do you get it? That's Italy in the Mediterranean. The joke is that he's the jumbo that goes across the Alps. Yeah, the elite Alps, where Schumacher has his accident, and they pretend that the elephants are still involved in that. That's the puka joke about the big ears, like Prince Charles has, yeah, and big ears and Noddy in Beaverbrook's Daily Express are a massive laugh at the war dead's expense, because the elephant is an icon for that, like the rabbit. The elephant does not have bollocks that hang down below its abdomen, and that's why it's chosen. Yeah, it's like the rats that were chosen in the Pied Piper of Hamelin story. Okay, and they've got the characteristic ears, and that becomes Winston Churchill's iconic gestures to the rabbit world. The rabbits
in Operation Winnie the Pooh are Hitler's friends, and they are being laundered by the papacy into Latin America through the Canary Islands. Right then, so Jumbo Wilson, easy to explain. Do you get it? The elephant joke across the Alps into Italy, where all of those kings and queens and Berlusconi's media empire. The media joke is the name of the woman that was found by Jason when he sailed the Argonauts through the clashing rocks. Her boat had been sunk, and Media is the girlfriend that he plucked from the ocean, and he saved her, and she became the friend of the world's elites that are the Argonauts. Do you get it? Her name was Media. And they have not yet made a decent woman of her. So this is Bhutto. I think he was involved in India or somewhere, or it might have been Pakistan, and I have not highlighted anything on that. I'm going to have to leave that for later, but you can look up Bhutto and everything is done. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was a Pakistani politician and statesman who served as 9th Prime Minister of Pakistan. Remember that Pakistan was partitioned out of Linlithgow on the outskirts of Edinburgh by the Scottish elites. That's the same Scottish elites that owned the cotton plantations and sent the Australians and the Kiwis to the colonies in the first place for stealing bread and to make way for their sheep. Ronald Cohen, don't know if this one's highlighted, no it's not. British businessman and political figure known as the father of British venture capital. Say no more. Howard Davis, London School of Economics. Oh, look at his jacket, it's just like the Bruins tartan. World Economic Forum, economist. Okay? Practiced at the Institut of d'Études Politiques in Paris, Sciences Po, where he teaches courses in the regulation of financial markets and central banking in the Paris School of International Affairs. Let's keep going. McKinsey. Now, I've told you all about Nancy McKinstry and the corporate takeover in China by her company, which is launched out of Amsterdam, called Wooters Cloyters. I've fished with people who are their employees because they come to keep an eye on me and seeing how much I've learned. And when I thought I'd learned everything about Nancy McKinstry's vicious mission, then I discover that this is just a cover for the McKinseys. Okay? And what you've got is a massive global conglomerate, yeah? And the revenue in 2013 alone was alleged to be only 7.8 billion. They've got 108 offices declared, and when I looked for McKinsey in the UK, guess what I found? I found this. Okay? It's quite lengthy, and it links us in to my mates the Pearsons. You remember Hugh, the man that used to fish with me, where we had the massive thunderstorm? He will not talk to me now. His son is mentally unhinged. He's had drug addiction problems. Companies in the UK business register, 27. Directors, 6. Sole traders, 3. European companies, 24. Okay, that's Great Britain alone in the registered companies here. Let me take you down. The Pines, Greater Manchester, everything is interlocked with the secrets of the religious fraud. Net worth minus 8,000 quid. Okay? Elstree, Hertfordshire, where the film studios were. Bedford Row, London, WC1R, Aston McKinstry. Carter McKinstry, that's Aston Martin. Oh, the Fiat story is quite luscious. I'll take you there really quickly in case my batteries run out. Preston, do you get it? Pizzo, Lancashire. McKinsey Law Limited, it's the law, Dad. That's how we defraud it, and that's how we take ownership of the world. McKinsey Learning Limited, like the Education Global Bill Clinton out of Covent Garden where the opera is sung, Pearson Mackenzie Limited, Walthamstow where the racetrack was for the greyhounds. Okay, oh they've got